Hey everyone, I'm Fred Schonberg. I'm the founder of Venture Fuel. Thank you so much for joining us today to celebrate Cathy and Travis, our Visionary of the Year and Venture of the Year. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we're so excited to have a pretty lively conversation with them coming up. For those of you that don't know Venture Fuel, we help industry-leading companies solve business challenges and unlock new areas of growth through collaboration with startups and new technologies. We're fortunate to work with amazing companies, everyone from Coca-Cola to Comcast, to Anheuser-Busch, to the state of California. And one thing that we always talk about and think about is the world will never be slower than it is today. So we need to figure out how to lasso what's next and apply that to our businesses, right, for future growth. And that's what Venture Fuel is all about, is solving your business challenges for today and tomorrow through these startup collaborations and working with emerging technologies. So in 2017, we launched our Visionary program, nominated and voted by their peers. The Venture Fuel Visionaries, we think of it as the Hall of Fame for innovators. These are the change agents that are embracing new opportunities to drive outsized results. From CMOs to the up-and-coming disruptors, they're the folks that are intent on blazing new paths, discovering inventive solutions, and powering the future. For those of you that did voting, you all know this, but the class this year of finalists is just bonkers. So we had Aaron Chin, who's the CMO for Logitech for creators, Pedro Earp, the CMO of Anheuser-Busch, but also the head of ZX Ventures, their CVC group, Cathy, who we will talk a lot about in a moment, Samantha Wong, who is the principal of BMW iVentures, Moro Porcini. Moro is the chief design officer for Pepsi, and then Dominic Venturo. Dominic is the chief digital officer at US Bank. So a really robust group of change agents that are out there. And then on our Ventures to Watch side of things, this program celebrates startups, founders that are out there rethinking traditional business models to reshape our society. Whether it's education to advertising, they're the innovators that are also blazing new paths, discovering and creating inventive solutions, and they will be powering the future. And this year's class of finalists, equally impressive. We have Encantos, which is a story teaching platform that empowers creators from around the world to help kids learn. Holler, which you'll hear a lot more about in a moment. Journey Foods. This was improving food science and supply chain inefficiencies to feed 8 billion people better. So supply chain is a very hot area. LG Ads, formerly was Alfonso. We had a great conversation on our podcast this year with them. They are helping brands find unduplicated reach across a fragmented TV landscape. Stix. Stix provides OBGYN approved and discreetly delivered fertility and vaginal health products. And then Ventana. Ventana is a SaaS platform that makes 3D asset production and distribution fast and scalable for folks in apparel and footwear and furniture, which will bring us, they also work very closely into the metaverse, which will be a big theme for today. All right, so let's get to our honorees. Please welcome to the stage this year's Visionary of the Year, Cathy Hackl, and the 2021 Venture of the Year, Travis Montaque of Holler. So I'm going to embarrass you both with a little background, and then we're going to get right into this. Cathy, your bio is so awesome. So Cathy is a globally recognized metaverse and Web 3.0 strategist, tech futurist. She's a sought-after speaker and business executive. You've become a media personality with deep expertise working in metaverse-related fields with companies, everything from HTC Vive to Magic Leap to Amazon Web Services. Cathy is the CEO of the Futures Intelligence Group, which is the leading metaverse consultancy, working with top brands on their metaverse and Web 3.0 strategies, NFTs, gaming, virtual fashion. Basically, how can you take your business and get it into the metaverse in an authentic way? Cathy, I mentioned, has become quite a media personality recently. And I mean, like every day, if you follow her on LinkedIn, you're somewhere else, Cathy. 60 Minutes, Wall Street Journal, Time, Wired, and a contributor to Ford. You've written 2 books and is writing an anticipated book on the business opportunities of the metaverse titled The Metaverse Economy. She has been dubbed, the best nickname, by the way, I've seen so far, the godmother of the metaverse, and she's one of the top tech voices on LinkedIn. Congratulations on being voted by your peers, the Venture Fuel Visionary of the Year, and welcome, Cathy.
Thank you so much, Fred. I mean, I am honored. I'm like the big thing I want to say thank you to my community, because they're the ones that voted. They're the ones that, rallied behind me. Obviously, I know we're going to get into it, but in this metaverse Web3, era that we're going into, it is about community, right? Community and authenticity are kings. And I am very lucky to have a very supportive community that believes in what I'm doing, believes in my vision. And yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. And Travis Montaque. So Travis, we were just talking backstage, dual CEO and co-founder. We'll get into that in a second. But he is the CEO and founder of Holler. Holler is a messaging technology company igniting emotional expression in digital conversations. We are so thrilled at the combination of both Travis and Cathy, because I think we can really talk about the future of communication and authentic community. And I'm very excited about that. Travis is also, I mentioned, dual CEO, is the CEO and co-founder of Group Black, the home for Black-owned media properties. He is an industry leader. He's laser focused on next-gen tech, which is perfect for today, media and enhanced digital communication, as well as DEI. Travis has a similar laundry list of accolades and accomplishments. He was Forbes 30 under 30, Entrepreneur Magazine's most daring entrepreneur, CSQ's Next Gen 10, and led Holler to place on Fast Company's 2020 most innovative company list. Travis, congratulations on Holler being elected the Venture Fuel Venture of the Year for this year.
No, thank you, Fred. It's such an honor. We're so excited. And for me and the entire team at Holler, thank you to everyone who voted for us. And it makes us stoked to continue doing what we're doing.
I love it. And we've talked about it on the podcast, how we met, but like in the backwoods at a speaking engagement where neither one of us thought we thought it was like at a conference hall in Chicago. And then we ended up, basically it was a fun weekend. But I first learned about Holler there, and I've been a huge fan ever since, and love what you guys are doing. So let's kind of level set. You guys have very complementary businesses and areas of focus. So for anyone on here that is thinking, what is the metaverse? I feel like we have to ask the godmother of the metaverse, what is it? Can you talk a little bit about what the metaverse is from your point of view, and maybe help others understand how people should think about it?
Happy to do it. I'll tell you what I believe it is and what it isn't, right? But it's really important, I think, for anyone listening to this, like there's no agreed upon definition. I tend to go to the Merriam-Webster dictionary every day. It's part of a ritual now, and I type the word metaverse in. And last time I checked a couple of days ago, it still was not there. So this word is not in the dictionary. All right. So I think that kind of is something to say, this is very nascent. We are building it. There is no agreed upon definition. So some people might have a different opinion than the one I have. I'm just kind of basing it on the work I've done over the last 8 years in metaverse related companies. So easiest way, I kind of take people in the past, take them to the future. So Web 1.0 connected information that gave us the internet, that changed a lot of things. Web 2.0 connected people that gave us not only social media, but gave us the sharing economy and gave us e-commerce and many different things, right? We're in the evolution of Web 2.0 going into Web 3.0, and Web 3.0 connects people, places, and things, or people, spaces, and assets. And sometimes these people, spaces, and assets can be in a virtual environment, like a game or inside virtual reality, but that's not the only place. To me, Web 3.0 also encompasses the physical world, right? So that's when we get into what is the metaverse, right? So Web 3.0 is separate than what the metaverse is, but they're kind of joint together. So the metaverse is the successor state to today's mobile internet. It is a convergence of physical and digital. So it's almost like your digital life catching up to your physical life. It is about persistent content. It's about virtual shared experiences that can happen in the virtual spaces or eventually in the physical world. It is enabled by many different technologies. So what it is not one technology, and it is not one company. Okay, that's not what it is. It's enabled by
any names of any companies.
What name could it be? I don't know. But it's enabled by many technologies, AR and VR entry points, AI, blockchain, 5G, robotics, you name it. There's many different technologies. And it is this convergence, right, of physical and digital. What I would say, the only way I can describe what we're living through right now, right, is we're all on this high-speed train to the metaverse. So destination metaverse. We don't know when we get there, right? And we don't even know the stops. We just know we're on this high-speed train there. Like that's where we're heading. So we're trying to use the words of today to describe the future, which is always a challenge. And the other thing is when I get asked, is it one metaverse? Is it multiple metaverses? Right. This is what I tell people is when you hear me talk about the metaverse or you hear someone talk about the metaverse, it's almost like the greater metaverse. You almost have to envision it this way. If you're in New York, there's something called the tri-state area, right? It's 3 different places being one. So when you hear the word the metaverse, you almost have to think about the greater metaverse, right? And within that greater metaverse, there are meta worlds, metaverse platforms, lowercase m. So the greater metaverse would be uppercase m. So there's like within that uppercase m, there's meta worlds or metaverse platforms or metaverses lowercase m. I mean, I think we're still figuring that out. But it's being built right now. When do we get there? I just know that the next 10 years are incredibly important for us to build the infrastructure and for us to start to figure out what the ethics should be of where we're heading.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Let's come back to that. So Travis, let's level set on Holler because I feel like I can't wait to kind of think how you guys operate in Web 3.0. And I know a little bit more about how you're operating in Web 2.0, if you will. But can you level set the crowd here and just tell them about Holler and why you started it?
Yeah. So when I started Holler, it was really from a simple fact. And it was the fact that sending a message online is the most frequent digital activity on the planet, right? And we're at the point where there are 100 trillion messages sent each year versus like 2 trillion searches on Google, for example, right? And why is that? Primarily, when we think about the devices that we use, whether it's our phones or other devices, one of the primary reasons that we use it is to communicate, right? And the form of the communication comes in the form of sending a message to whoever we want across all of these different spaces. And for me, it was bizarre that we hadn't seen enough innovation in the messaging experience since the first text message was sent in 1992, right? Just words on a screen. And so for me, we wanted it to catch up. And so when we started Holler, it was with a very simple mission. It was 3 words: enrich conversations everywhere, right? Because one, we always believed that you could always innovate around what it meant to enrich a conversation. We could always expand on what a conversation meant, right? So it could be a text message right now, or it could be a communication experience in the metaverse, right? That happens. And everywhere speaks to ubiquity. We didn't want to create a messaging platform. We wanted to be where everyone was. And so Holler is a conversational media company. We power the media that lives inside your messages. We use AI to understand the context of those messages in real time and send relevant and deliver people relevant content in over 1.4 billion messages a day. And so it's really exciting. It's really exciting to innovate around how do you make those conversations better between people, right? We fundamentally believe the conversations online can and should be better. And having good conversations is fundamental to creating relationships. And therefore, the things that we do, the innovations that we do, the experiences that we create will help to create a better relationship, society, and overall experience between people. So that's what we do at Holler. We're so excited about it. It's inspiring to me, the types of people that work with that are working towards this mission. We have everyone from animators who are creating GIFs and content. We have AI researchers who are doing like building our AI, our contextual AI that understands like human communication in real time in a privacy compliant way. And I love that you said ethics, because one of the things that has been important to us as a company is how do you develop an AI in an environment? AI inherently needs data to train itself and be performant. And so a big challenge for us was how do you develop AI in a conversational environment that also keeps the integrity of people's messages? And that's been a big part of our innovation, where we've developed an on-device AI and we invest heavily in edge computing. So it's been it's really exciting. That's who we are, what we do. Our business is quite art and science, so to speak. And we're pushing the bounds forward on those two dimensions every single day.
I think it's funny. Every time you and I talk, when I hear you say enrich conversations everywhere, like it makes me want to go back and be like, how do we describe venture fuel in 3 words? Like it's such just a beautiful description of like where you are, but also gives you room to grow. So it's always very impressive. Anytime I hear you say it, the way if I'm trying to help a brand, right, that's listening, think about this. Let's take like an NFL team, like Kansas City Chiefs, right, had like insane past week. If you're the Chiefs, how do you get involved? Like essentially with Holler, you've got a keyboard, right? So I'm texting my friends, whether that is through WhatsApp, whether it's text, whether it's on LinkedIn, right? There's all these different areas that we communicate with people. And essentially, rather than saying like, did you see the game, right? Like the Chiefs logo could pop up, or you could have a video of Mahomes throwing a pass or something like that. Is that how brands, in this case, I'm using the Chiefs as an example, would use Holler to kind of integrate them within to that story communication?
Yeah, I could give you tons of real examples. So, like, what's interesting about messaging is the conversations that we have so messaging, it lives at the intersection between search and social, right? Mm-hmm. So it's social by nature because you're talking to other people, but messaging is highly intent driven, like search. You're talking about where you want to go, what you want to do, the things that like what's on top of your mind, etc. So you like, hey, I'd like lunch, or let's grab coffee, right? At that moment in time, our technology could understand that a person is intending to communicate their desire for coffee at the moment. And what we do is we suggest relevant content in the form of stickers and gifts in this scenario that is relevant to that conversation. Now, we again, we're in 1.4 billion messages a day, and so what that yields us is the ability to say, yeah, we could send you a generic sticker or gift, or we could present to you Starbucks right at that moment. And so those brands show up natively in conversations, and they're actually helpful. Now, what's very interesting is that in many cases, we see consumers leverage branded content in messaging more so than organic content. And why is that? The reason why that is because brands are a natural part of people's self-expression, right? Like when I choose Starbucks or Dunkin', that says something about me. When I wear this brand or that brand, it says something about me. And so what messaging provides for brands is a vehicle for not only the brand showing up natively in a conversation in a way that's helpful, right? But at the same time, it enables those brands to be able to be shared in that conversation, which is an endorsement from the sender, right? So it's a very powerful vehicle. We've seen so many different things about the effect that branded content and messaging has had on consumers with the various measurement that we do. And it's the reason why we've had such great performance with brands, and why like we work with everyone from, L'Oreal to Molson Coors, right? Who found natural parts in conversation.
And Travis, to your point, I think that the genius there is the organic part of it, right? It's not a brand entering my space and trying to sell me something, because I don't like billboards in the metaverse. Like, I think that is disruptive. That is not the model. It has to serve me. It has to allow me it needs to make my life better. It needs to be organic. It needs to be something that I want to see, right? So I think that that's really interesting. I'm really interested in your perspective also. Obviously my work I do a lot of work with virtual fashion as well, related to avatars and how they, I always say this, and I say, emojis in some way become emotional surrogates. Like, what we use in these texts that is not text, right? That is images or things like that, become an emotional surrogate of what we want to express. So, and I see this continuation happening going into gaming spaces and into, the metaverse that we're building, and the importance that the avatar plays in how we represent ourselves and how we communicate. So I'm sure you've given it plenty of thought as well. I'd love to kind of and sorry to take the interview away for you, Fred, but I think it's a really interesting conversation for us to have,
Well, what's really interesting about that, Cathy, is so you're talking about digital identity and self-expression. So one of the things that I've been tracking very closely is in the early days, it's messaging, just the internet in general. We've seen like it was like mass consumption of content. So everybody wanted to use the same GIFs, everyone wanted to use the same memes. Everybody. Now, what we're moving into this world of digital novelty, right? And what avatars provide is digital novelty is a behavior that actually we as human beings always liked, right?
Yeah.
We always like to collect things. We always wanted our own thing. So humans are the same since the beginning of time, right? It's just the tools and the mechanisms and the spaces that we have are evolving, but we always bring those same behaviors into every single one of those environments. And so what you're seeing in this particular situation with respect to avatars provided an opportunity for us to bring digital novelty in the form of our self-expression and identity. And so this goes into NFTs and like all these different things where when I have my digital representation of myself, I'm going to bring all the same, what I collect, whether it's art, cards, watches, this, that. The avatar is a vehicle for me to exemplify all of those things that are novel to myself in that world. And it's a form of self-expression, right? So it's funny, like I've been following expression, like that's like a core about business, and I'm seeing expression evolve. And as we go to the metaverse and Web3, the technologies are just enabling this expression in new and novel ways.
Expression and exploration of self and identity as well, right? Because I always talk about how in the metaverse, like I'm really short, I'm 5 feet tall in real life. And I always get like, wow, you're so short, but in the metaverse, I can be 6 feet tall and I can be a purple unicorn one day because I want to be a purple unicorn. Right? So I think that there is that evolution of self and identity that's happening that is very connected to what you do, which is the communication side, right? And another thing that's important, I think, and sorry, Fred, is that
I'm good.
The things that are happening on Holler and the things that are happening in the spaces that I work, that culture is being created in these spaces, right? Culture that is going to be the culture that is going to be relevant and mainstream the next couple of years. So, because sometimes we like, why would I want to be an avatar? I'm like, no, you don't understand. You're not understanding that Fortnite is creating culture. Like all these sorts of things are creating culture. Holler is creating culture.
Well, you know what's interesting? So one of the things that people so I think about language in a way very different from most people, right? And so when people think about language, they think about English, French, Spanish, etc. Language is how whatever like people ascribe to explain something, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that the internet has provided is the most language changes at the speed of incredible rate, right? Like think about how many terms and new terms and slang and it evolves on the internet.
Wag me. Like I wasn't using those terms before.
Yeah. Right? Think about at the beginning of this conversation, you said the metaverse is still not in the Webster dictionary. Right? Language is something that changes, and language is actually not dictated by a body. Language is dictated by a community. Yeah. Right. And so the communities are whether like if you walk into some Discord rooms, you're like, what is everybody talking about? Like, what is everybody talking about? Right. It's a whole language. And that language driven by community is driving, it drives change, it drives culture, it drives all that. You're gonna see that same thing translate into Web 3.0 and the metaverse as well. And I'm what I'm excited to see, and you certainly know more of the metaverse than me, but what I'm excited to see is how we take the things that drive internet and culture today, and how that's going to affect the experiences that we see in the metaverse. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch.
So, Cathy, let me ask you this: the first time you and I did a podcast, you said to me that that my son is going to be buying his Air Jordans are actually going to be skins, right? on his avatar. And it sort of was the first time that the metaverse hit me. It's like, oh, just the way I craved Air Jordans and I can't touch the rim, right? There's no reason for me to have Air Jordans. But that was my my dream self-expression was to rock those. And so that this is now how that this generation and future generations are going to express themselves. I'm curious from your standpoint. I mean, you guys talked about sort of your avatars and the fashion being part of it. How do you see this evolving in the metaverse, right? Like right now, I feel like a lot of what's popping and doing really well in, I'll call it Web 3.0, right? But is fashion brands and things like that. How does this evolve for other businesses where it's not a Budweiser dropping in a can NFT, right? Which is awesome and cool. And like, I love the positioning around it. But like, I'm trying to think what's the next step of this? And then Travis, my follow-up will be, where's conversation in whatever the answer is?
So this is what I'll say. It's so obviously fashion. I mean, fashion tends to lead in many ways. It's like some of the brands, like the Gucci's, the Ralph Lauren's, like some of them are like really innovative and they're really pushing it right now. They're pushing the boundaries, and they can do that, right? They have certain liberties to do that. Yeah. And it doesn't mean every brand is being able to do that just yet, right? What I think is, what I see and what I do a lot of work in and what I track is the evolution of commerce, the evolution of retail, of how we shop and why we shop, right? So I think the conversation needs to be framed around that more so than, I'm just buying an NFT for buying an NFT. It's at the end of the day, it's about ownership, right? Digital ownership of digital assets. And the way I explain to people, it's like for centuries, we've been doing physical to physical commerce, right? I go to a physical place and get a physical item, come home, right? E-commerce evolved that, where I get the physical item delivered at home, right? But it's still, the experience of shopping in e-commerce is not that great. You go and try to find there's no serendipity, there's no fun. The element of shopping per se isn't quite there. You've got gaming culture, which for decades has been doing virtual to virtual commerce, where I buy a virtual sword in Minecraft, or I buy a virtual skin in Roblox or virtual Air Jordans, and I pay Robux, digital currency inside the game, not tied to blockchain in this case. So virtual to virtual commerce has been happening for decades, right? In the gaming space, it's been going on for a while. Yeah. That obviously seems to have been like, now it's like a big thing. People are, all the brands are getting in on direct to avatar, everything. Where I think the evolution leads us is further into new commerce models, that the ones that I'm thinking through, the ones that I'm trying to architect and imagine are virtual to physical commerce, where I am in an experience and a item is delivered to my house, or where there is a physical to virtual commerce, right? And there are also going to be other models of commerce that we don't even know exist because they haven't been created. We haven't gotten there. So I try to frame that with that model of thinking like, why do we shop? Where do we shop? Right? Because where we shop, the points of purchase are changing. The customer journey is changing. So that's evolving. That evolves what products and services I make, what the brands become in these spaces. And before I hand it over to Travis, like that's the lens I'm using when I'm looking at the opportunities for the brands I work for. And also just in general, understanding the power and the opportunity that there is in creating these new commerce models. If e-commerce changed things, imagine what the new models are going to, how this is going to change things. And to that point, I think there's a big component related to voice. There's a big component related to, communication around why we shop. What influences me to buy something? Is it word of mouth? Am I hearing it, through my friends? So I think that there's a lot of things there related to community and how we shop that are probably, connected to the work Travis does.
Yeah. And Travis, hold 1 second. So just on the physical to digital and digital to physical evolution, knowing it's evolving, but sort of like a 101 example of that, right? Is I go buy a Coca-Cola and there's some sort of unlock or under the cap, right? To be really simple, that then happens in the digital space, right? So it's enhanced. I'm buying it physically, but it's enhancing my digital or virtual experience. And on the virtual side, I buy something, let's call it an NFT to be simple. And that unlocks a physical experience where I get tickets or access to an underground club or society or something like that.
And it hasn't been done at scale. So that's why I think there are a lot of opportunity there. So I'll give you the clear examples. LOL doll, you can buy, there's they have some physical LOL collector's cards that unlock some NFTs or something. They're doing something there. It's not at scale. And then the virtual to physical would be like the people that ordered a pizza inside Decentraland and got a Domino's pizza delivered to them, right? Not at scale, once again, not at scale, but those are the kind of it's changing. The points of purchase and where consumer behavior is changing. And I think that that's very much tied to like the work that Travis does around communication, around, how do we engage with these brands organically? How do we find the brands?
Yeah. I mean, Travis, I can frame a question or you can just go based on your thoughts. Let me know.
Yeah. So I think it's funny because I one of the things when you talked about the like Holler's mission statement, enrich conversations everywhere, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why we said enrich conversations everywhere instead of enrich text messages everywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, because it was very intentional, because we believe one of the things we hung our hats on is that we believe that as a like a core argument, we're like, well, we think that people will always continue to have conversations. So the question for us and the evaluation that we are doing as we continue to watch the metaverse evolve is, how do people have conversations in these environments? Now, in many cases, audio is a big part of it, right? Because of the way that you interact with the space, right? So it's looking at, well, how do you audio from a conversational perspective? How do you leverage audio to initiate certain types of experiences that might be helpful to that person's current state or intentions, right? So in the same way where we identified like there is a relevant, this piece of content is relevant based off of the ongoing dialogue, and we could be helpful. We're taking the same type of premise and like the same type of approach, right? So if I'm in in one of these spaces, one of these meta worlds, right? How could you leverage the current dialogue or the current conversation that's happening to provide useful experiences along the way, right? The AI that we built at Holler is a contextual AI, right? So its objective is to understand the context and be able to help make a relevant suggestion. That's where Holler's name comes from. When something's missing, Holler, right? And so, we from a technology perspective, for us, it's evaluating. So what could make that? Is it a gameplay? Are you trying to complete an objective? Are you trying to learn? Right. And like if there's communications happening related to that particular experience or context, we believe that there's opportunities to provide appropriate content for that format and that environment. And so it's a very fascinating time, right? Because it's almost like you created it's not almost, it's literally created another dimension to what you could do. One of the things that I find fascinating about conversational experiences, it's the only experience, we'll take text message specifically.
Yeah.
One of the only experiences on the internet where people are doing it is experiencing the same thing at the same time, right? So when you go on social media, you're seeing everything's about personalization. Conversations are about joint experience, right? And so in a world where like joint experience is an important part of the metaverse, we believe that conversational technology and contextual AI is going to have an important role.
I think it's so interesting. And Cathy, I'd love for you to maybe think about and talk about how you see conversation evolving. But, when I first was sort of introduced to Discord, right, I started thinking about you, Travis, right? Like this sort of idea of like, obviously there's a whole text element to it, right? But people are talking as well. But like you're gaming and all of a sudden it's like, what are you doing for dinner? Right? Goes out. And like there's the contextual moment of like they're gaming, they're at home, they're hungry. That's your Domino's moment in terms of like the brand side. And of course it has to be authentic and it's got to be right? It's got to be the right brand, right time. But to me, it's so interesting that like, within a game or Discord or something like that, like this is where the younger generation communicates. I mean, it is within what is, the nascent stage of the metaverse. So Cathy, how do you see that the ways of communicating evolving as we sort of get deeper into the metaverse?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changing. I don't think, I think I love, Travis, you mentioned conversation more so than text or anything like that, because conversation evolves, right? It changes and it moves. what I tell people is like what I see with my kids. I mean, I've got 3 kids. Where are they socializing? They could care less about Facebook and Instagram. They're in Roblox. They're in Minecraft. That's where they talk to their friends. That's their campfire. Like that's where they are right now. Right? They're not on Discord because they're a little bit too young, but the conversations are happening in these spaces and they're evolving. I'm really interested in voice and kind of the role of voice as, once we move from phone to glasses, like voice unlocks a huge different, way of navigating the world. So I'm very interested in looking at that, but it's just, to me, it's just from the work I do and the brands that I work with. And I tell them this, I said, look, I know it's a little scary, right? It's a little scary. You don't know the metaverse IP, you're worried, but it's also such an interesting moment to be a brand because you are at this cusp of like evolving. You can evolve. Like just because you sell soap in the physical world, you have to sell soap in the virtual space. Like it's a chance also for brands to reinvent themselves, to change. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of people in the teams that I work with are reinvigorated. It's the dawn of a new era for a lot of us, and dawn of a new era for creators that are actually getting paid for what they do and getting not all of them, but most of them paid really well. So I don't know. It's this new opportunity. I know the creator economy is like a term that's overused or what have you, but I have a phrase, and you've heard me say this, right? I've said, in the metaverse, we are all world builders, and this is your time to build. And I always say that. And I say, it doesn't mean that you have to be a developer and create a world. You might not have those skills, but you can build community. There are things there might be tools that are low code, no code. There are ways for people to build. And that's what I see with my kids. Like they're building, they're creating worlds. And that in itself is a way of communicating, right? Who they are and what they aspire to.
Yeah. It's super interesting. So you both have mentioned authenticity, community, brands being worried about their IP, right? Can you maybe each of you give a little bit of a warning story, and you don't have to bring up any particular brand, but like maybe a watch out, like of somebody that's coming into the space or a category that came into the space in a way that was inauthentic, right? I'm thinking about the people that are listening going, yeah, I would love to work with Holler, but geez, I would hate for our coffee to pop up in this X moment, right? That was wrong. Maybe just how someone's not doing it right.
Yeah. So I have stories, and
I bet.
Don't throw anyone under the bus, Travis. Don't do that.
Think about how to shield the name.
So like what I try to remind brands is conversations. This is a conversation, not NASCAR. Right. So it's important. It's important when say a brand's natural inclination, especially in when they're trying to create conversational media, is they forget that it's a conversation. And so the content has to be useful, right, to the conversation. Right.
Yeah.
So like putting up your logo and your whole brand message and tune in on Thursday at whatever, like all of those are not good uses of that. But there has been some really fantastic, so brands have done that is like, it's wrong. It shows in the data, people hate it, and they don't use it. It's showed by their non-use of the content.
Yeah. Sharing
is the biggest proxy of that. And one of the best, one of the brands that we worked with that I've seen, I mean, they are the savants, creme de la creme of I've seen in the space is Molson Coors, right? They year round, they show up. They run initiatives with us for every season, every tentpole, every moment. They're there for March Madness, right? And then it's Coors doing brackets, 3-year brackets. They're there for the Super Bowl. They're there for the holidays. When it's cold, Coles cans ski. We're going ski. It's Coors cans going skiing, right? Their summer is Coors can it's on the beach. They're doing. They just figure out how to be so culturally plugged into every single moment. And in a world where share rates are like 1%, you'll see like share rates 25+%, right? Like one out of like every time I'm having, imagine that every time I'm having a conversation, 1 out of 4 times I find this brand useful.
Yeah.
Every time I say that, right? Think about how many conversations you're inserting yourselves into in the relevant way. So it's like how do I understand the culture, or how do I get so tapped into the conversation where I know what my audience is going to want, right? And how they're going to use it.
But to that point, Travis, I think it's about those nuances, right? This one, this brand obviously gets it, right? I'll give you an example of what not to do. So there was the big Pepsi drop. Anyway, everyone in my feed, everyone was like cringe, like just, Pepsi, I think they said GM, and then Meta came in, said wag me. And it was just like, look, guys, like you guys have not been using these words. You have not, this is not part of your language. You're co-opting this. Like, I'm not comfortable with this. And I said in my mind, I sat down and I said, okay, what brand could pull this off? If I was a brand on Twitter, because that's where it all went down, what brand would I be? And I said, Wendy's. Wendy's could totally pull that off. Wendy's can do that. Wendy's has got that attitude. When Facebook changed its name to Meta, Wendy's tweeted changing name to Meat. Like I was like, I could totally see Wendy's coming in here and totally running with this, and it would work. It wouldn't be cringe. It would be fine. But then when you have these brands entering the space and trying to like co-opt the language of the Web3 community, it didn't feel authentic, and it just didn't feel right. So much so that this morning I got Ad Week, I think it was Ad Week or Ad Age, the newsletter today was like how not to be cringe on social media, right? And I was like, case in point. So yeah, I think that it's about those nuances of community, that if you're not in those communities, if I tell this to the brands, if you're not on Discord, it doesn't mean you have to run your own Discord, because that's an undertaking. But if you're not in there listening and paying attention to what conversations are happening, how they're organically happening, and you think that you just can jump in and sell something, that's not how it works, right? And I think that's proof of what you're seeing in your data.
Yeah. It's like Popeyes. I feel like Popeyes is so good at so. I mean, like one of the funniest brand moments I remember is like when they launched the chicken sandwich, their new chicken sandwich, and it went like completely viral, and everybody's standing in lines. And then they tweeted at Chick-fil-A and just said, "You good?" I mean, like that's like a brand with an authentic voice who just like knows what it's doing.
It's very cool when a brand gets it right. Obviously, it's hard, right? And the fact that you just said they should go and listen on Discord, right? Like that's such an obvious piece of advice, but one that is probably not heeded very often. Okay, so what I'd love to do is everybody listening, like start pinging questions in. Would like this to be about you all and getting any insights you'd like from Travis and Cathy. I've got several more, but if you start popping in questions, we'll work them in here. The one thing I wanted to ask you all, we alluded to privacy, and to me, I know both of you are very firm believers in it, and making sure that people's data are protected, their privacy is protected. But when you think about AI, and when you think about starting to have conversations in a virtual world, right, where everything potentially could be recorded, captured, listened to, etc. Not that our physical world isn't very similar to that, but how do you think about that, and what should brands be worried about or thinking about as they get into these spaces? And maybe Cathy, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, so I mean, I come to it I live in Washington, D.C. So when you live in Washington, D.C., no matter where you work in, there is an element of policy that is just part of your daily life, right? So one of the things that I try to do a lot is I try to go to Capitol Hill to educate lawmakers on what these new technologies are, so that they better understand like the complexities and how this is going to change their constituents' lives. So one of the things that I say is, when we talk about the future, right, when we talk about wearables, when we talk about kind of where we're heading after the mobile phone, I said, look, the next war, it isn't going to necessarily be a kinetic war or necessarily a full cyber war as we understand it right now. It's a war that's going to be fought within our eyesight and our earshot. Like if you control what people see and what they hear, right, beyond what they're scrolling on, which we already know has impacts.
Yeah.
These are the difficult, uncomfortable conversations that we need to have right now. I'm not saying that if we have them right now, we won't have challenges, but we need to get ahead of it so that, next time I see one of those CEOs is, being grilled on Capitol Hill, we don't have a senator, asking questions and them saying, Senator, we sell ads. I mean, that's been their business model the whole time. Yeah. So, I think it's really important for lawmakers to be educated. Also for people in different offices, like trademarks and patents. I've seen patents that are overreaching, and you can tell that the person that approved this patent had absolutely no idea what they were approving. And that impacts the innovation in the industry. That impacts a lot of things. So yeah, I come to it from that perspective, trying to think about policy and the future of how do we shape policy when we're innovating so fast. So
yeah. Travis, what are your thoughts overall on sort of privacy and how we continue to protect it or protect it more as we move forward?
Yeah, so at Holler, one of our policy, so we have a very privacy principle, which is the conversation is yours, not ours. We are just here to make it better. Right. And so if you ask, one of the things that we've done, given the sensitivity of the space that we live in, we've done a lot of research, consumer research about what does privacy mean to a consumer, right? And what's interesting is that you find that except for some company, a couple of companies, consumers generally trust organizations, right? With their data. What they're more afraid of is when their data is compromised or breached, or and something personal about them gets up where it affects their lives. But they're all okay to let a corporation have data to give them a better experience. Well, the problem that we run into is when people use data from consumers in ways that they don't expect, right? It's that piece. That's the big problem with respect to privacy. So the issue is not using data, and there's one camp that said don't use my data for anything at all, and that's probably not going to be the best thing for innovation and advancement, right? Because data actually is a powerful tool in helping us build powerful solutions. What we need is better hygiene, right? Mm-hmm. We need better hygiene around how we are articulating to consumers what their data is being used for. And we have to examine business models where their businesses only work if consumers don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's my position on privacy. And so for me, I was when in doubt, this simplistic disclosure, right? And not when we say people say we disclosed it in a 100-page file.
Yeah.
No, you didn't, right? Because no one
reads that. Yeah.
Right? So privacy is, in my mind, fundamentally giving consumers choice about what they share with you and what they don't. And if they share that data with you, how you handle it, and making sure that it doesn't get into the hands of people that they didn't intend it to.
Yeah.
I think that's the type of hygiene that we need to strive for as a society.
I think there are so many, we can go so deep on that subject. The questions that are coming in are so good, though. We've got to address two of these. I think we can do it. Or it's going to be high level here. But the first one, what's the impact of diversity on startups and businesses in this emerging space? How will that ensure that Web 3 doesn't suffer from the biases of Web 2? Go, either one of you, because I know you both feel passionately about this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to do my part to get more access to education to women and BIPOCs. So that there is a level playing, at least trying to level it. I do think my message to everyone is you are welcome in this future, welcome to build this future with us. I am proof of that. If you can see it, you can be it. When people call me the godmother of the metaverse, and that was Andrew Schwartz from Nike that gave me that name. He's part of the metaverse team. I take it very seriously, and I wear it as a badge of honor. So I'm doing a lot of things behind the scenes to help more women and more people feel welcome, and also allow them to learn and educate themselves and have opportunities in this new future that we're building. So I can only do as much as I can do personally. But yeah, it's a personal mission for me personally.
Travis, what do you think?
Well, I've got a lot to say. My role at Group Black.
Yeah.
So where do I start? So one of the things that people don't realize when designing new systems are designed, like the output of the system is inherent to how it was designed. And so some of the things that we've seen in Web 2.0, right? For example, why do algorithms algorithms and like AI systems bias towards like Black accounts and versus not, right? Is because the people who train those models have trained those models with a certain context, right? And so if we don't have diversity in the people who are designing the systems, then those systems are going to act based off one major point of view, right? And so as we go out and build Web 3.0, it's important that we have diversity in the people who are architecting the system, or the systems is going to, there's going to be embedded in the system inherent biases that affect it overall, right? And we've seen this in from everything, from search, social, how those systems affect the experience of certain types of people and not others. That's a very important one. That's the first point. Now, one of the things I'm finding as I'm perusing, as we're getting deeper and deeper in Web 3, the way that Web 3 and the way that it's very exclusive, right? And so there's a lot of bespokeness to a lot of things in the community, right? I'm saying bespoke. It's
I use that term a lot, though, but yes.
And so, one of the things that I would encourage the community to do as they're designing Web 3 is figure out how do we design it in a way where it could be approachable for more audiences, right? It can't be just only a specific community gets the language and lingo and gets to capitalize. I was just looking at an article yesterday that says 90% of the assets in Bitcoin stuff is controlled by 2% of people, right? And you look at that and that's translating in the same fashion in NFTs, right? So if we're sitting here saying that the next wave of everything is Web3 and all this stuff, but look what's happening, right? It's still consolidated amongst a very small few. So how and which is the antithesis of what Web3 was? It's this decentralized web, right? Yeah. And it's centralized to 2% of the people, right? So there's gotchas there. There are things that are already turning into and emerging the same types of behaviors that we've seen for Web 2, unless people intentionally make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Both these questions could have been full episodes. So we've got 3 minutes left. Let me ask this question very simply, Cathy. Do you believe down the road that I could jump from Roblox to Fortnite with my same avatar, my same self? The question was essentially from an infrastructure standpoint, what is needed to allow people to sort of tether different worlds together so their identity remains the same as they move throughout it. Is that possible?
Interoperability, that's the big question, right? Interoperability, that's what they're asking about. When I think about what does it look like? What is it going to eventually look like? I think there are many of us that want to build that open decentralized model, that's what we're going towards. It doesn't mean everyone's going to be open and decentralized. What I envision is a lot of these open decentralized areas where, yes, I will be going from one platform to another and have portability of what I own. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be that way. I think there probably will be some walled gardens and some centralized places that there might be a reason for you to go there. I think it remains to be seen. I think a lot of the companies are comfortable with the word open. I don't think that they're comfortable with the word decentralized. And I think that is at the cusp of that interoperability. So yeah, and I'll give you an example. Like when Mark Zuckerberg did his keynote, when they did the rebrand, I counted several times when he said open. And in my mind, my big question was like, what does he mean by that? Is it open within the family of apps? You know, is it open as in open and decentralized? You know, we'll have to see. I have my guesses, but right, I think it is a lot of conversations. It's not going to be as easy, right? Interoperability is hard to solve for. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if you're going to be able to go between Roblox and Fortnite, but you will be able, you know, you are already able to do, you know, so go from Sandbox to maybe some other places. So we'll see.
Interesting. I mean, I think, Travis, that'll impact your business too, right? Because where people can access Holler and how that works. And so it's very interesting. Let me say this. Thank you both so much for taking the time to chat. I could keep going for hours. This has been so interesting. You're both incredibly deserving of Venture of the Year and Visionary of the Year. And we're just honored to be friends with you all and to allow us to learn from you. So thank you for your time. And sorry we didn't get to all these great questions, but hopefully maybe we'll do a 2.0 one day.
Yeah. Thanks, Fred. Great chat, Cathy.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Travis.
Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.